Here to talk about all things politics in California, KCBS political reporter Doug Sovern. Thanks for being with us today.
Hi, Anne. Always great to be with you.
All right, hot off the presses, a new poll that is not spelling good news for San Francisco District Attorney Chesa Boudin. It looks like a lot of voters want to see him recalled.
Yeah, this new poll comes from the supporters of the recall, the people who put the recall on the ballot, and it's pretty dire for the DA. I mean, 68% of the San Franciscan surveyed say they will vote to recall Boudin on June 7th. 64% of those are Democrats. Or 64% of Democrats say they'll vote to recall. And, three-quarters of the voters say he's doing a terrible job as DA. So does not look good for him. Now, you always take with a little bit of a grain of salt an internal poll that comes from one side or the other, which this one does. It's not a nonpartisan poll, but even so, those are overwhelming numbers. It looks very bad for him. He's got a lot of work to do. Now he has, 3 months, but it shows that most San Francisco voters seem to be predisposed to kicking him out of office in June.
Is there one thing that you can point to that appears to be the main problem that's the real turnoff here? The smoking gun? Is there anything that he could look at to fix specifically before this recall comes out?
It seems that the rise in crime, or the perceived rise in crime, the retail thefts and the very high profile crimes, people are blaming his policies, that his policies are too progressive, he's too lenient, and they think his policies and decisions, whether it's true or not, are leading to what they're seeing on the streets. And it makes them very uncomfortable. And they think they made a mistake in handing the city law enforcement department to such a progressive, and they've seen enough, is what this poll says. And there's a bit of a pendulum swing back towards we need to be a little tougher on crime than he has been.
We will see how that goes. I know you
Yes, we
keep us
will.
posted as those votes roll in. Meantime, everybody talking about gas prices these
Mm.
days, and that is causing a bit of a political fight in Sacramento. Where do people stand? Is there anything that we're going to see as far as repealing of some of the taxes that we have right now? What do you foresee there?
It's interesting. There's been a lot of ideas floated to do about gas prices, and they're all getting shot down. So at the moment, nothing's happening. The Republicans wanted to suspend California's 51 cent a gallon gas tax. Democrats said, no, 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 no. That was defeated on a party line vote in Sacramento. The governor proposed suspending the 3 cent a gallon increase in the gas tax. That's supposed to come in July. It's going to go from about 51 to about 54 cents a gallon. The Democrats said, we don't want to do that either. The governor proposed some sort of tax rebate. First, he wanted to do a gas tax rebate. Democrats were cool to that. Now they are negotiating about a tax rebate. It wouldn't necessarily be the gas tax, but some sort of tax rebate. Maybe it would be through the DMV when you register your car. It's unclear, but they'll take it out of the surplus that the budget has. That has some traction, but even that, it's a little bit lukewarm. It's not, I mean, it may end up being that nothing happens, especially, oil has come back down below $100 a barrel now. If gas prices level off and start to come down by the summer, by the time the budget has to be done, maybe nothing gets done. But at best, right now, you're probably looking at maybe a tax rebate. There's also a new idea being floated that the oil refiners would have to post their monthly profit. They'd have to show every month in California how much did they pay for gas, how much are they charging you, how much are they making, and that when people see, oh, they're making over $1 a gallon in profit, the consumer outrage would pressure them to bring prices down. That's a new bill that's just getting started in the legislature. We'll see if that one gets anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Meantime, when it comes to moves in Sacramento, very rapid moves when it
Hmm.
comes to the Cal admissions situation. We know that there was a neighborhood group that sued Cal,
Right.
capping its emissions at what, 1,000, and the legislature and the governor is saying, no, 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 let the kids go to school. How did that happen so quickly?
Boy, we have never seen something like this. I mean, look how long it takes to get anything done through Sacramento or government in general. That bill, so the bill Nancy Skinner from Berkeley developed it, the idea was change CEQA, the Environmental Quality Act, just to give sort of an exemption to colleges and universities that if they're found that they didn't do adequate environmental review before something like this and affecting enrollment, they'd have 18 months to rejigger what they've come up with. So there was a very rapid consensus on getting that together. They introduced that last Friday. It had its first hearing Monday morning. It passed the Assembly in the middle of the day Monday. It passed the Senate in the afternoon. The governor signed it Monday night, and it was unanimous in both houses. When is the last time they did anything in 3 days
Never,
unanimously? Never. I mean,
never.
it just doesn't happen. And they were all on board with it, partly because, you've got dozens of campuses all around the state, Cal State and UC, and pretty much everyone in the legislature has one in their district or nearby enough that they all had an interest in seeing this get through too, because they didn't want the same thing to happen to them. And there was
Well,
overwhelming consensus that the students, you needed to let these students go to school, and this there needed to be a way to solve this, and they solved it in record time.
so somebody like Nancy Skinner, I'm just trying to figure out the politics with this. I mean, a lot of her
Hmm.
voters would be the people that would have maybe wanted a cap on admission,
Sure.
because they're concerned about
Yeah.
housing prices and noise and all the things that goes along with,
Berkeley liberals.
yeah, well, having thousands of college students in your neighborhood. For her, what was the advantage of pushing this through?
Well, remember, she also represents UC Berkeley, which is an enormously powerful player in Berkeley. It's a classic town and gown situation, and the city and the campus often are at odds, but they also work together on a lot of things. And she saw very quickly that even though there's this one group that is worried about expansion, that the bigger picture was there were thousands of families who wanted their kids to get into school, and Cal needed to be able to move forward with this. So on balance, she thought there has to be a way. CEQA's gotten out of control. There have to be some limits here, some sort of reform, so that universities are not constrained by this just because one person or one small group sues. And so that's she decided that was the way to go, and she worked very quickly with all the players to get it done.
So, Doug, last time we talked about some of the very few challengers to Governor Gavin Newsom. You're seeing some interesting candidates come out of the mix.
Well, now the deadline has passed, and we'd reported that John Cox wouldn't run. Kevin Faulconer took a pass. Any big name we thought might get in didn't. Who is Gavin Newsom running against in June? You've got Brian Dolly, a state senator nobody's ever heard of, who doesn't have a lot of money. You've got a guy from Orange County who's a lawyer and a military veteran named Sean Collins. You've got Leo Zaki, fourth generation from the Zaki Farms poultry empire. I mean, you've got a bunch of people who nobody knows, who have no experience in government. Some of, I suppose if you're a chicken heir, you might have some money, but they're not well funded. They're not well known. There's really no one. So basically, Gavin Newsom is going to waltz in this primary in June, and he's going to face one of these guys, or maybe one of the other people on the ballot who are even just as little known. And then one of them is going to get demolished in November. And no one stepped up. And the same is true on the U.S. Senate side for Alex Padilla. Newsom and Padilla are going to cakewalk to reelection in November.
And you were a little surprised that nobody challenged Padilla since he is relatively new to the position.
Yeah, you'd think somebody would make a run of it, make a name for yourself. You raise a little money, you could put out a book, you get some face time. No one decided it was worth it, which is somewhat surprising. I think after the recall and how badly the Republicans did in last September, a lot of people took a look at this and just said it's not worth it. And the donors who would have to put up the money said, we're not going to give you the money. Why are we going to pour millions of dollars into a losing cause? So they'd rather focus that spending on taking back the House, making Kevin McCarthy from Bakersfield the Speaker in November, focusing on that rather than a losing proposition statewide.
All right, KCBS political reporter Doug Sovern, thanks for joining us on CBS News
Always
for
good.
the area.
Always good to be with you. Thanks a lot.